Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. If you have nervous energy, you can use it to be successful. We'll find out today how we can do that from Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Dr. Chloe, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Bill. It's great to be here with you.
Dr. Chloe, first of all, during these difficult times, how are people doing with all the stress they must be going through?
Well, that's a good question, Bill. I think obviously different people are dealing with it in different ways. But one of the things that is really helpful for many people is to make sure that they stay in good touch with their friends and family and making sure that they give their body a chance to move and exercise.
I like both of those. And I know when I talk to friends and during this time, I do feel better. So it's something I've experienced and obviously right on. Now, you talk about dealing with highly successful people. And what's the term? High functioning people. Am I correct? Yeah. How does stress affect those kind of people differently?
Sure, Bill. Well, I would just start by saying, first of all, that a lot of people are high functioning who may not even realize it, Bill. Like you're high functioning, your listeners are high functioning. So in psychology, high functioning is really just a clinical term that means people who are well and healthy enough that they're able to do things like set an alarm and get out of bed at a certain time and go to work whether or not they feel like it, maybe have some good friendships and some decent relationships. Many of us just think of that as everyday life. But in psychology, that's actually the mark of a higher functioning person. And, the thing about higher functioning people and stress is that we're pretty used to being able to manage and be in control of things. And so when life does throw us a curveball, and maybe for the first time in a long time, or even the first time ever, we suddenly feel like we're at a loss and we're bumping up against something that we don't know how to deal with, that can actually become a stress in itself because it's kind of a new and unnerving experience.
Yeah, I love your title, and of course that attracted me to your book right away, Nervous Energy. And the two thoughts that came into my mind, many times I'll be sitting and someone will say, will you stop bouncing your knee? And my knee is going up and down. Or the old thing from way back in grammar school, do you have ants in your pants? Why are you bouncing around your seat so much? And I guess kids still do it today. They're sitting there. How did this term come about? And is this a medical term, so to speak?
So nervous energy is not a medical term. It is the title of my book, but it's actually a term that I just personally started using to describe what I was seeing in my practice in New York City, which is just, full of really, type A successful people. I noticed that a lot of them described themselves as having anxiety. And while they were coming to me because they wanted help dealing with it, they also, I noticed, seem to have a little bit of an attachment to it and a recognition that maybe the part of them that does always like to, double check things or, feel a little bit high strung sometimes is actually also the side of them that's helping them to be successful. It is the part of them that's helping them to plan ahead and really be on point. And so I found a lot of their work with me was around learning how to keep the good parts of that but manage the other parts of it. And so that's where the term nervous energy came in, because the energy part is really good. And a little bit of nervousness and anxiety is actually normal and healthy, but we just want to make sure we keep it in perspective.
And Dr. Chloe, we should tell our audience, first of all, you've talked about this radio, TV many times. So this is something that is, I guess, prevalent in the world and affects a lot of people.
It absolutely does. And I think in this day and age, especially more than ever, with people dealing with so many stressors and with people coming out more and more and recognizing that anxiety is something that many Americans are dealing with. And what I want people to know about it, the good news is that anxiety actually really does have a very healthy function, a very healthy role in our lives, which is to stimulate preparation behaviors. So sometimes the people come come to me and they say, how do I get rid of my anxiety? I tell them, you would never want to get rid of your anxiety. A little bit of anxiety is a good thing. It gives us a little boost of adrenaline and focus. We just need to make sure we know how to use that boost constructively. That's the trick.
Now, you mentioned before about your practice being in New York City. Which came first? Did you say I'm going to go to open up in New York City because there's so many people with nervous energy and they're just surrounding me? Or was it the reverse, that the people were there and you said, I better get there for them?
Well, I actually came to New York myself around 2001. So it was long before I was a psychologist. I was a yoga teacher at the time. And then it was through my work, with yoga and private students and just really getting interested in the mind and how the mind works as well, that I ended up getting a PhD. So it was New York first, psychologist next.
Okay, that sounds fair enough. Now, we're hearing the term nervous energy from you as a psychological term. What would be the manifestations that we would see if we're thinking of our spouse or our partner or son or daughter and say, oh, you have nervous energy? Is it internal, or would we see a little bouncing around, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, that's interesting, Bill. I know this is the second time you mentioned like the physical bouncing around. And I actually didn't really mean the term so much on the physical side, Bill, but I will say that's a very interesting connection, that somebody who is fidgeting a lot, they obviously have a lot of extra physical energy. And I certainly do believe in the body-mind connection. So, being restless could certainly, suggest that. Other signs would be, racing thoughts, like you just can't seem to, kind of shut off your brain sometimes, or maybe you joke about yourself as being a little OCD or kind of a perfectionist. Those would be the types of things that suggest that you actually have a fair amount of extra mental activity going, which is not a bad thing. In fact, can be a great thing. We just need to make sure we shape it so that it's working for you instead of against you.
Now, to prove to you that I looked through your book and read it, I took a quote out of there, and you say, we get a boost in mood and productivity from a sense of organization when facing complex goals. This leads to feelings of motivation and engagement. And certainly when I read that and I highlighted it in my notes, I said, that makes sense, because when I start feeling that way, if I start being productive, it can be small, etc., but it boosts me up, and then I want to do the next task. And I'm a basically lazy person, so this is very good for me, and it gets things going. Does seeing someone like you and knowing about the nervous energy help us organize it? I guess that's what I'm really asking.
Definitely. And that's exactly why I wrote the book, Bill, because certainly seeing me and having me help people organize their nervous energy was super helpful for all the clients in my practice. But the problem was, of course, that there's only one of me, and there's a lot of people in the world, maybe some of whom didn't have, the opportunity to see me because of budget or schedule. And, I thought, why not put it all in a book? Because studies have also shown that people with anxiety are sometimes very well helped through self-help. Because again, that little boost of anxiety is what makes us read all the directions, try them out, see it through, pay attention to the details. And so that's why self-help can actually be super helpful for those of us with a little extra nervous energy.
Now, the high-functioning people that you talk about, I'm going to ask you the similar question to the one about the nervous energy. Do they know they're high-functioning? Is this the all-star track star in college, the person who is just always grinding it out to be number one? They had to be first in their class. Or are they just good or high money earners? Does that have anything to do with it?
So a lot of people, and I actually talk about this in the book as well, a lot of people are very surprised to learn that they are high functioning. So, yes, some people, it's just very clear, as you said, they're number one in everything and they just know they're high functioning. But for example, there could be some really successful, incredible, women that are doing the soccer mom and the PTA and having a great dinner party, and they're in a book club and everything else. And they're actually surprised somehow to learn that they are absolutely 100% high functioning. Or you could be, say, a college student or a graduate student. You're not making any money yet, but you're on top of your assignments. You're going to class, you're engaged in things. those are what makes someone high functioning. And you're right, Bill, a lot of people don't realize it and they just focus on, oh my goodness, I have anxiety. And, they can get kind of down on themselves. They're prone to perfectionism. And a lot of them I found were very helped and relieved to learn that, you know what, I might have these issues I'm dealing with, but at the end of the day, I'm actually a pretty high functioning person. I'm just kind of polishing myself a little bit here. And that was a helpful framework for a lot of the people in my office and for a lot of people who have read the book as well.
Now, Dr. Chloe, I'd like to let our audience know if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Dr. Chloe Carmichael. She is the author of the book, Nervous Energy. And Dr. Carmichael, would you tell us a little more about where we can get the book and if there's a website where we can learn more about you and your techniques?
Sure. If you go to nervousenergybook.com, that will tell you everything you need to know about the book, and there'll be plenty of links to find out more about me and my site as well. So the easiest thing is to hit nervousenergybook.com.
And if we're looking for the book, can we get it through the website or just on Amazon? Is it in bookstores?
Yes, and yes. You can go to Amazon. It's on Audible. It's on Kindle, paperback, hardcover. And, you can get it through the website, Amazon, or other bookstores, wherever books are sold.
If we did an overview, if we were kind of peeking in, and you're probably on the 90th floor or something, but if we were peeking in the window, what group on, let's say, any day of the week, Thursday morning, would we see coming through your office? Is it mostly professional people, salespeople, lawyers, or is it just almost vegetable soup of doctors, lawyers, sales, pharmaceutical agents, etc.?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful mix that is New York, right? So it's the Wall Streeters, it's the executives, it's the, Broadway people as well. They tend to have a lot of extra nervous energy, people in the arts.
Really?
But yes, absolutely. But again, also it could just be your everyday person that's maybe a student or, stay-at-home moms. And everybody has nervous energy. High functioning people can be found everywhere.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, too, that a lot of these people don't think of themselves that way. So do you surprise them when you say it's, you're a high energy person, you're a high functioning person? Do they and say, oh, no, I'm not?
Yeah. I think a lot of them are kind of surprised because, they've spent their whole life, just doing what high functioning people do. They're in, say, a college classroom with a bunch of other people who are also able to set the alarm and get to the class on time and, able to get accepted into a college, et cetera, or they're going to an office. And so they're surrounded by a bunch of other people who have a job and those kinds of things, or they go to their Sunday brunch with other people who are also organized enough in their social life to have and maintain friendship. And so they don't really have a reference point of comparison. Whereas I, obviously in my clinical training, I've worked on hospital inpatient units. I've worked in all kinds of other settings enough to realize that what you and I might think of as everyday people is actually just a subset of the population and that they're actually high functioning people. And again, while some people are surprised to know it, I think it's oftentimes really a relief because they can get so down on themselves, like because say they had a panic attack or they're dealing with, some anxiety that's making it hard to focus. And they're feeling so insecure and hard on themselves about that. And then number one, when I point out that there's actually some pretty simple, straightforward techniques that can transform the way that they are experiencing these issues. And that secondly, they're actually pretty much, doing pretty well anyway. And that this is just a little issue in the scheme of things and that we can work on it and fix it together. People find that very reassuring.
I was just going to say, I read in your book that in itself is therapeutic because it's almost like you've justified and said, wait, you really are very good. You may not be number one or number two, but 7 out of 50,000, you're pretty much up there and you're doing a great job. And that in itself has a therapeutic effect, I guess.
Absolutely. And it reminds the person that they are a strong person who has the ability to learn new skills, which is exactly what they need to do in order to overcome whatever the anxiety issue is.
Now, naturally, if we talk about high functioning clients, there must be the other side, the low functioning. And I don't mean this to knock them, but is that just a nice marketing technique? Like when you say to someone, you're a very smart person. Well, we sit back and say, oh, yes, I'm a very smart person. When you see someone who is low functioning, what would be a sign of that in is it their demeanor, their job, their income?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would just start by saying that in my training, I worked with a lot of lower functioning people, and they are truly some of the most wonderful people that I've ever met. So, just because somebody maybe has cognitive or emotional issues that say prevent them from being someone who can live independently or who can organize and keep together their own social life and take good care of themselves independently, which are, some of the basics of becoming a high functioning person. Just because somebody's unable to do those things, there are many absolutely wonderful people with great, beautiful hearts that I enjoy very much, as a person and as a clinician. But the types of skills and techniques that are going to be most helpful to those people are different from the types of skills and techniques that higher functioning people need and want so that they can live their best lives.
Now, you mentioned that higher people, high energy people, or high functioning clients have this nervous energy. Do they actually like it when you give them some tasks to do to kind of get them back on track?
Oh, they love it. They absolutely love it because, that's what they want. So the hallmark actually of depression is helplessness. And so if somebody's feeling anxious and then they also feel helpless as to how to deal with the anxiety, then they can actually begin sometimes to spiral into depression. So when they're struggling with anxiety and then they learn that they're actually not helpless because there's a bunch of techniques, really good, simple techniques that they can start using immediately that very same day, they get pretty excited. They want to help themselves. They don't want to be stuck in anxiety. They're looking for someone to help show them how. So that's why I wrote the book, because I said, I don't want to just have this be something that you have to come to my office to get. Let's make it even easier for people to get it.
That's really great. And you may have seen me jotting down the word helplessness, because as long as we can do something for ourselves, it's just like, I guess, the word hope. If we go in with a medical condition, so long as there's hope, they might tell us we have a gruesome sounding disease. But whether it's a pill or an operation or a course of treatment, if that can save us, we feel pretty good. And in dealing with the psychology of things, I guess that's what you're doing for us, getting us on that course of treatment. There's help for us. It's just knowing which button to push, and you're the one who knows.
Right. It's empowering to know that you have tools you can use right away.
Exactly. I love that word, empowering, because that's what we always want, whether it's through you as the professional, the medical doctor, the policeman, the detective, whatever service we need to kind of get us back on track. Dr. Chloe, before we get into some more questions on this, and I want to know some of your techniques, I want our audience to know that they're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan. Today we're talking to Dr. Chloe Carmichael. She is the author of the book Nervous Energy. And Dr. Carmichael, would you tell us again where we can get the book and the website where we can find out more information?
Sure, Bill. NervousEnergyBook.com.
Easy enough to remember. And you told us before that book is available all over the place.
Exactly. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold.
And I think they're going to find a very interesting read, because you have some very interesting clients that you come across, naturally being in Manhattan, in the heart of New York. And if you can help those people, I think you can help us. And it's nice to think that we're high functioning. It makes us feel good right away. So that gives us a good start. Now, I think I read in your book that basically there's 9, what would we call them, courses of treatment that you use? Techniques. Okay. Can you kind of give us an overview of what that would be? How gruesome is it going to be, like the dentist, or is it a lot easier?
It's not gruesome at all. In fact, it's a lot of fun. So one of the popular ones is called the to-do list with emotions, because everybody has a to-do list, right? But sometimes for high functioning people, we can almost just start to feel like we're like a hamster on a wheel with a to-do list. We're just kind of knocking out the tasks, but we're not feeling fulfilled and connected with them. Or maybe sometimes we're just procrastinating on that to-do list and we're not sure why. So the to-do list with emotions can be super helpful. In that one, what you do is you start by obviously making a to-do list, and then you look at each item and you jot down the emotion that you feel when you look at that item. And it may not even always make sense. And then you layer in some self-care. So an example of what that looks like would be, I had a client who, for whatever reason, was constantly not bringing her gym bag to the office so that she could exercise after work. And it was, really driving her nuts. She just couldn't get this thing done to bring her exercise clothes and get to the gym and everything. And so we looked at that to-do list item of, bringing the gym bag to work. And what's the first emotion that popped up? And she said, this isn't going to make any sense, but shame. And I said, okay, well, when it doesn't make sense, that's actually usually kind of means we're onto something. Let's explore that. Why would you feel shame about that? And she said, well, to be honest, my gym clothes don't really fit me anymore. They're back from when I was a smaller size. They're kind of old. And I honestly just feel embarrassed stuffing myself into them. And so we realized, okay, so that's the issue. And the self-care, of course, is to get gym clothes that fit her. And once she did that, problem solved. She was no longer almost unconsciously resisting or fighting that item on her to-do list.
And did that get her over the hump? Did she start doing it
Absolutely.
correctly?
Absolutely. Because a lot of high functioning people, again, they may have a very high sense of personal responsibility. And, she wasn't the, wealthiest person in the world and didn't feel like spending a lot of money on her clothes was something she necessarily should be doing. She didn't want to just go buy a bunch of expensive new gym clothes. She thought, I can deal with these. I can still wear them. And she hadn't really realized that, for her going to the gym and stuffing herself into clothes that really didn't fit her was bringing up enough shame that it was actually causing her to avoid doing it at all.
I'm just thinking, not only did you help her financially, because she's probably paying for the gym and not going to it or not getting the benefit out of it, but health-wise, if she joined a gym, she either wants it or needs it to for health reasons, you're getting her back on track that she's doing the right thing. And it all came down to buying the right size sweatshirt and pants, I guess. Or
you're right, Bill. It was financial and it was physical health, but it was also self-esteem and emotional health, that she no longer had to keep beating herself up or, she was being really hard on herself for constantly, quote, forgetting or not doing that. And realizing that she could do it and giving herself the tools to do it was really great for her self-esteem as well.
I'm a list person. I thought maybe you already diagnosed me while we're talking and said, I'm going to start off with the list with emotions. But that would be so good for me because I could see it putting something down saying, what's the emotion that goes with that? Now, do you work this through with them, or does the client basically do this and come back and like a homework assignment?
Well, in my sessions with clients, we actually do it ourselves. Yes. But, it's something people can absolutely do by themselves. I do it by myself. So that's in the book as well. I share about my own, personal journey of using a lot of these techniques on myself. And we're also getting together some master classes and some group formats for people that maybe just want to do this together in a group setting as well. But you can totally just do it on the back of a cocktail napkin by yourself anytime you want.
So are you telling us the techniques you're giving, the 9 techniques, we could pick one out and do it? And I don't want to put you out of business, but that we don't need Dr. Chloe to be there?
That's exactly what I'm saying, Bill. Yes. And, that's honestly, again, I think it's liberating for people to know that. I'm not saying that nobody ever needs to see a psychologist again. Obviously there are times, maybe when self-help isn't working for you that you would want to go see somebody. But I think it's also important for people to know that sometimes just learning and knowing the techniques and getting some step-by-step directions and some everyday examples of how these techniques work for people like you can do the trick by itself.
I think that's wonderful. And for our audience, I mean, for the price of a book, which is interesting in and of itself, and I always tell people it's a discussion point that if nothing else, when you get on a plane or a cocktail party in the good old days, maybe we'll do that again in the future, but it gives you some anecdotes to talk about. But if we can do this for ourselves, and just as you talked about the lady with the gym, and find out the problem, maybe why we're not as neat as we should be, or achieving as much as we want, or whatever their individual problems are, that would be great. And I know the techniques, there's nothing there that's even near as painful as a simple visit to the dentist. So,
Right, Bill. And, I would also just, adding on to that a lot of therapists have actually also ordered the book, and a lot of other people, clients, have messaged me on social media saying that they are sharing the book with their therapist because maybe they want their therapist to go through some of the techniques. So, there's a lot of different ways that people can do it, or they can just do it totally independently with just them in a book.
It sounds like a great way to start. And then if the problem seems to be bigger than that, or has outgrown themselves, then they get in touch with you or a therapist who can work with them, or a professional. Is there any one field that you find that the people are really stressed out? Do you get more salesmen, stockbrokers, lawyers, doctors? Maybe I'm forgetting one, professors, accountants?
Yeah, that is such an interesting question. I do find that there are certain industries that, just in my experience, I'm not, saying that this is true of all people, but in my personal practice, I've found that, say, people who are accountants, they do tend to have more of, maybe OCD type issues. They're, kind of obsessive and compulsive oftentimes, which actually helps them, again, to make sure that those numbers are correct and the accounting is correct. So there's a positive quality to that, but then there's a tipping point where it becomes counterproductive. And then there's other industries, like in the fashion industry, for example, I tend to see, a little bit more of the, panic attacks and things like that. And again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily, borne out by research, but yes, in my experience, I do find that certain industries and niches of people tend to display certain symptoms more often than others. And I do think that's interesting.
Is there, I think you have 9 techniques. Of the 9 techniques, is there one that you would tell most people to start off with first to try?
Definitely. So the book is actually almost like a cookbook. So you don't have to go in order. You can just choose one of the recipes that, kind of seems to speak the most to your situation. But one technique that's going to be a good starting technique for most anybody is the first technique in the book, which is called the 3-part breath. And it not only teaches people kind of a unique and special, different type of breathing technique that helps them obviously with their breathing, but that technique also helps to build mindfulness, or what psychologists call metacognition, which is the ability to think about your thoughts, which actually really helps us to make really good strategic self-care decisions when we have more awareness about our thoughts.
Dr. Chloe, you've been great. And again, I like it because it's less painful than the dentist. And it seems like there's a lot of great cures here. And even better, we can even do them ourselves. Before we wrap up, once again, give us that website.
Sure. www.nervousenergybook.com.
And of course, if anybody missed the first part of the show, that's the name of your book, Nervous Energy. They can get it in all bookstores and help themselves on their road to success. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Carmichael.
Thanks, Bill. The pleasure's mine.
I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.